Well, in the pouring rain, Oxford United get a point against high-flying Middlesbrough. Con and I are going to be discussing it on this episode of Walking the London Road. Before we get too far into things, folks, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us out in the algorithm. And drop it a little share as well to any other Oxford United fans. We want to try and get to as many Oxford United fans as humanly possible, so we'd very much appreciate all of that. Connor, that was... We'll get into it. Not a bore draw, but it was certainly a game of a lack of quality.
It absolutely was. I think that I think we were almost half expecting a lack of quality from Oxford, but I will, as you say, we'll get into it. A lack of quality in cutting edge from Middlesbrough as well.
Definitely, especially the players at their disposal, where they are in the league, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, let's kind of talk about the 11 because there was some surprises. We'll say that for free. Tyler Goodrum and Luke Harris coming into an Oxford United side for the first time in a long while. Definitely, Tyler looks like he'd been out in the cold, and obviously a lot of reports that he'd be loaned out in January. Maybe a few more performances under his belt, and maybe those plans will be ripped up. But good to see both of those lads starting.
Yeah, do wonder what the reaction might have been if Rowett hadn't even had Goodrum in the squad once again. I do feel that it might have been a little bit of a swing towards a lot of vitriol towards Rowett, let's put it that way. But yeah, I think after the week that he's had personally off the pitch, Goodrum's well, congratulations to him. I think that him getting back into starting lineup, I think was actually a good bit of man management, because I think he would have been buoyed up by what's been happening in his personal life, and coming in onto the pitch and wanting to carry on that good momentum that he's had. And with Luke Harris, which I'm sure that we'll get into, he was definitely turned out very much to be the right man to be starting, as I thought that he put in a decent shift, which, as I said, I'm sure that we'll get into.
Definitely. It was also interesting, I thought, that Rowett's trusted lieutenant Sariki Dembele wasn't even in the matchday squad. Obviously, he's spoken about in the past that that's going to happen from matchday to matchday because of, we've got so many players at the top end of the pitch. Something that Grant Ferguson spoke about on the dub this past week, about a lot of players in the attacking areas, maybe midfield is where the club are going to look in January. All we've got to do is dislodge Shemi Poheta, and then the two most frustrating wingers in the league are no longer in the matchday 11.
What does Rowett see in Plaheta? I was saying to the bloke I sit next to, how many games has it been since Millwall? Would you a Plaheta screamer soon? Because that's all I can see that he can do. Sam, I was losing my absolute rag at him. I was losing my rag. I was losing my head, losing my cool a bit too much. I've already said my piece on Plaheta time and time again. I don't need to recite it. But yeah. But I can see it. But on the other hand, I can see why he starts him, because it looks like that Mills is more effective coming off the bench with about 20 minutes to go. But I don't want to waste my breath on Plaheta.
All I will say is that I thought in the first half, I thought he was actually pretty good in his direct running on the counter attack, picking up on the ball. That was all really positive. That's the good side of Poheta.
Yeah.
The bad side of Shemi is second half taking a shot from 35 yards out for absolutely no reason whatsoever. And there, we obviously after the Millwall game we spoke about Shemi's quote unquote road to redemption. Shemi, just focus on the good parts of your game, mate. Focus on that direct running, on being a handful for opposition fullbacks. Stop trying to shoot from 25, 30 yards out when there's literally no need to do so. All you're doing is wasting the ball. And a lot of the times you do it in key moments where we need to put the ball in the back of the net.
And that's what infuriates me. His decision making is so much more poor than it is good. As you say, shooting from 35 yards when he had two man out that were free that he could have passed out wide to and created another opportunity. Trying to do silly little flicks like Dembele does from time to time. But trying to, there was one I think in the first half, he chested it or caught his shoulder and he was trying to lay it back down to Curry, I think it was, and it didn't work out whatsoever. It's just those little things, thinking that he can slick through the ball when really he doesn't really have that control and that ability, that technical ability at a championship level to be able to pull those things off.
I thought maybe surprises that given his performances in the international break that Filip Krastev didn't start, but at the same time, I wonder if there's he's flying quite a while back from his Bulgaria duty, so I wonder if that played into it. It's obviously that Greg wasn't going to start given the flight times for his Jamaica duties.
I wonder if Krastev starts on Tuesday as this goes out. I wonder if he starts at Norwich because there probably are going to be changes. Like, for example, don't see Goodrum starting. I think we can see Krastev starting out on that wide. I wouldn't be surprised if Plaheta comes off either, and same with Harris, which I would be quite disappointing for him after getting the goal. But I did mention last week the 3 games in 6 days, so there is going to be quite a heavy bit of rotation. But saying that, as Rowett said, we've had fair few of the players have had 2 weeks off, so I'm not having this might be tired nonsense having to go again on Tuesday, which I did say applaud. I applauded him because I get sick and tired of managers at the top level saying that the players are tired.
I understand it for players at the top level when they're they play a lot of games and they have to go on international break, the players on England duty, for example, jetting all over Europe, and then have to go back into club football. I get that. We're at championship level, like say, when it's a handful going off international duty, and then a lot of them, like say, getting 2 weeks off. It's less forgivable, I think. So let's have a look at our the stats for this game. Is absolutely hilarious, I think. Quite a domination of the ball from Middlesbrough point of view. But, like we said, there wasn't an awful lot of quality. So, as you can see on the shot map, a massive amount of shots from outside the area. And, I mean, the same can be said for Oxford, but we just had a lot less of them. First half was a bit more balanced, I think. I think that there was a bit more of a basketball game flow to it, kind of end-to-end sort of stuff. Like we mentioned, a lot of fortune down the wings on the counter-attack. Brilliant switch to play from Brian Kersmacher, from Cameron Brannigan. Obviously, Brannigan's also plays a part in the goal. But first half was certainly, I wasn't feeling like I did when we played Middlesbrough last season when we got tonked.
No, and I wasn't feeling like I was when we were playing Stoke a few weeks ago, because Stoke on the turnovers they had that clinical edge to them which Middlesbrough didn't, and it was quite funny. Again, I was saying to my old man, the bloke I sit next to, this sounds so strange, but in a way, watching Middlesbrough in the final third kind of reminded me of us in the fact that they had all these chances and they didn't have someone who was clinical enough to stick the ball in the back of the net. And if I was a Middlesbrough fan, I would have been absolutely infuriated. I would have been so irritated. And when you look at some of the comments from Middlesbrough, they've said similar things to what we've had, in that they didn't have anybody to stick the ball in the back of the net, or the chances that they were created, they weren't getting themselves into decent positions. Anyway, this isn't a Middlesbrough podcast, it's an Oxford podcast. I thought that was just interesting to know anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
But definitely in the first half, we're definitely creating more. We looked like, as you say, it was an end-to-end basketball game. And sounds strange. I thought that it was quite an enjoyable first half of football, if you're a neutral from both sides. And we'll get onto the goal, but it's so funny what can happen if you're quick on the ball and you change in transition, change in possession, and you're quick and you look up and you're forward and you're direct, and you don't pass back sideways or backwards. This is what happens. You can actually score a goal of decent quality.
We'll get onto the goal in a second, because there's something we need to touch on before that I know. I definitely saw at half time there was a lot of whining from Middlesbrough fans about, and that's Luke Harris's challenge. Rout has his say on things in the after the game with BBC Radio Oxford. He doesn't even think it's a yellow card, which I think is a little bit wild. But it's certainly, studs up, it's high-ish. I think he does get a nick on the ball, but it's the fact that he, studs up right into the man. It's definitely a yellow card, and I thought watching the the highlights back with the Radio Oxford commentary, Peter Rose Brown, I think it was, made a good comment that those are those challenges sometimes that referees can get twitchy at and send the player off. But a rare bit of credit to this referee, because I thought throughout the game he was really inconsistent, and he did keep his cool in that situation when surrounded by Middlesbrough players.
Robinson would have been fuming with this referee, by the way, Mr. Inconsistent. I saw Rowett lost his head as well in the second half, but I thought Harris was lucky to stay on the pitch. When I saw it, where I sit, you could see the studs go up. You could clearly see the studs, and I thought, oh, he's probably going to walk. And a few around me were saying no, that he's a very, very lucky boy, because you could have easily seen the justification for him having his marching orders.
It's like we said, it's certainly one of those that referee dependent. I think I'm just thinking if God forbid we had VAR in this league, I think Harris might end up having to walk for that. Just because, like you say, it's like halfway up the player's shin. Rowett tried to use the excuse that the conditions were a bit were slippery and difficult to control yourself, but that's not really an excuse when you got studs up on an opposition player. No,
it's not really an excuse. But was that before or after? I was going to say, Middlesbrough players didn't help themselves. I thought even when Harris, well, in our opinion, we think that he's lucky to stay on the pitch. They didn't help themselves with, a few Tom Daly's on the pitch. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, we'll get to one of those that happens just after the goal. Speaking of the goal, it's a really, really great ball from Cameron Brannigan as play breaks down in the midfield from Middlesbrough. Switch of play out to Jack Curry. We've joked so many times that Jack's a proper Brexit style left back. He has a nosebleed when he gets near the opposition's box, but he makes those runs consistently. He gets in good areas, and his delivery of a ball is pretty good. And this was no exception. Really good ball in. Like you say, it's almost like you can benefit from those if you gamble, lads. If you're in the right area, just put it in at near post, and Luke Harris gives us a 1-0 lead.
That's what we did really well at Leyton Orient last season. Obviously, he exceeded. He was able to get down that line and able to put in a ball for whether it be number 10s or number 9s to stick the ball in the back of the net. And it's so I think some of us couldn't believe our eyes that we actually saw forward direct attacking football, against a team who is, and at the time, currently sitting second in the table. So more of that, please, Mr. Gary Rowett, because I don't think that anybody who's going up to Norfolk on Tuesday can bear another 90 minutes of just absolute nothingness, sideways and backwards.
Also, like I said, credit to Jack for his work. Credit to Luke Harris for making that run. It's something that he's apparently done quite a lot in the youth teams of Fulham, obviously, where kind of he's been very, very prolific. Making that run late into the area to latch onto those kind of balls. And for a young lad to have that instinct already should work out pretty well for him in his career.
Yeah, it'll be great. It'll be great for him to get on the score sheet a few more times while he's in a yellow shirt. There was a bit of if memory serves me correct, wasn't there a bit of hesitation when we signed him, when we got his signature?
Yeah, because I think it was a case of, we just lost Ruben. It was the idea. I think we said at the time, it felt a little bit like, even though it's in the middle of the window, it felt like a deadline day panic signing, bringing in this lad that was, he was okay, obviously, with Birmingham last season, but the quality of their players in that squad meant that he didn't get as many minutes as certainly Fulham would have hoped, and definitely Luke Harris would have hoped. But yeah, it was. I do remember us having conversations of, is this really the right kind of player we want to gamble on? And so far, obviously, he's had very limited involvement so far, but it's looking like a smart loan deal.
It is, yeah. So I'd like to see him get on the pitch, get a few more minutes in him. I'd like to have seen more minutes from him this season. And just say, by the way, absolute criminal to take off Harris for Harris. Are we going to get to that?
I think we might do it in a little bit, because we need to talk about, like you said, the Middlesbrough players' Tom Daly impression. Alan Brown. Now, I will say that in the moment, I thought it was, the most blatant dive I've ever seen in my entire life. However, I watched it back and it's a little bit closer than I thought. Obviously, ball in the area, Helic, I think, does get the toe on the ball, but Alan Brown goes down. But it looks like it's like the tiniest of nicks that Helic gets on the ball before he plants his foot and Alan Brown goes over. It's one of those we've seen awarded time and time again. So maybe a little bit luckier than I thought on the day.
See, I'm the opposite to you. When I saw Alan Brown go down, I thought, oh shit, it's a penalty. What a stupid challenge. And then I've watched it back, and I'm quite the opposite in thinking that maybe you probably have better eyes than me, but I didn't see like any nick from Helic on Alan Brown whatsoever. I thought it was a pretty pathetic dive, and I think a fair amount of others think that it's a pretty horrendous dive as well. So I think we might have to disagree on that one.
I think just because I went through and I literally frame by frame the full match highlights this afternoon, just to see, because like I said, in the moment in the East Stand, it seemed like Helic had played the ball and then Alan Brown had literally thrown himself to the floor. But yeah, I think it's more that Helic gets a nick on the ball and then he plants his foot. So basically, Alan Brown he plants it like just as Alan Brown's foot come down. If that makes sense, it looks like he could get a touch on Alan Brown, the edge of his toes, but it wouldn't have been enough for a penalty. But it certainly, I mean, from where the referee was stood, it's one of those, like I say, where we've seen them give them before, just because bodies in the way and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But it's in the past now. We take that. Sometimes we need luck, and I think that weirdly during that game, luck was on our side in one way or another.
I did think that. I think I said to a couple of guys around me that this feels like a game that at the time I didn't want to say it out loud, but it felt like a game we could go on and win. It felt like we had the rub of the green on our side, which we haven't had a lot this season. I don't know why, it just had that kind of vibe about it.
That's why I came out disappointed. I went in saying if you offered me a 1-1, I would take it. But I came out of that game, as you say, because we had the rub of the green. I think luck was falling on our side with Middlesbrough in front of goal. Some refereeing decisions, although be it inconsistent, there was a fair amount that were falling to us, which was good. But then also I thought we didn't exactly play to our best either. I'm thinking that if we had something a little bit more, and then players were making the correct decisions, getting the ball into the right areas at the right time, then we could have nicked it. So I did come out disappointed, which is, I guess, which is a pretty positive thing to say against the side who was sitting second in the league. But, I think that it still puts on pressure for Tuesday, because you need 3 points on Tuesday, whatever would have happened on Saturday.
I will say, gone. So I was just going to say that I think I think I might have put this in our group chat, that I think that game does result in 3 points for Oxford if Cameron Brannigan stays on the pitch for 90 minutes. Obviously, goes off in the 42nd minute. It seems it's a calf problem, I think it is how Rout described it. And he's definitely going to miss the Norwich game and might also miss the Ipswich game, which absolutely ideal, isn't it? 3 games in 6 days, and our captain is out for 2 of those games. I think, if Brannigan's in that match for 90 minutes, I think we maybe win, because I felt that with Volks and De Keersmacher, we were a little bit lopsided in midfield, because both were trying to do a similar kind of thing. Neither was doing the, box crasher, as I believe is the new term for that kind of box-to-box midfielder.
Yeah, and I think this week, when, as you said earlier, when Rowett alluded to the fact that we have about 50 strikers and wingers, when what we really needed was more depth, more cover in midfield for situations like this. So, unfortunately, we haven't got a window to go to, so we're going to have to deal with it for the next 7 days at least, which will probably turn into 14 days at the very least. So it'll probably be Volks, Volks and Dekursmaker starting. I wouldn't be surprised if, because Brannigan's gone, if Harris starts again on Tuesday, or if he saves him again for the Ipswich game on Friday.
And welcome back to the matchday squad, Louis Sibley. So second half, I thought we didn't start in this half entirely well, which is a bit of a theme for this this season so far for Oxford. It's their goal comes from I don't know whether to put it down to sloppiness or Middlesbrough kind of actually playing up to their ability a little bit. But it's worked into the box, and Morgan Whittaker puts it past Jamie Cumming at his near post. I think I've been saying to the people around me for kind of maybe 2-3 minutes before that an equaliser was coming, and shame that we couldn't hold out for at least another 10 into the second half.
Yeah, it was. I think Middlesbrough just turned the dial up a little bit, and for parts of the game, I was impressed with Whittaker, although he did let himself down at time, and also Bergzorg. I thought that he had Sam Long's number down the right-hand side at times, especially during that first half. You have to say it was not the cleanest of strikes, and you could say that there was a bit of luck involved with how the ball landed on Whittaker and trickled into the net. But, as we said earlier, turned out to be a game of luck, and luck was exactly on Middlesbrough and Whittaker's side at that time. But also,
go on.
Sorry, Sam. I was also going to say, I was saying that to my old man and I were saying that Whittaker goal, albeit maybe he didn't mean it, he was still running into the correct spaces to be able to present himself with the opportunity to do that, and that's just something that we've been lacking. So it shows like the different way the footballing mind works. It's just like two completely different levels in one league in the Championship.
It's the kind of goal that Whittaker scored against us for Plymouth a fair number of times. We're very well aware of that man's ability, but like you say, it's definitely was a case of Middlesbrough turning on, playing to their ability. Hayden Hackney, I thought, was a lot better in the second half. I thought the first two was a little bit. He was making those runs, but he was just as susceptible to the rest of his colleagues to committing stupid fouls or trying stupid stuff. I thought it was better in the second half, and I mean, I'll be shocked if that lad isn't in the Premier League in January. But other than I think Whittaker's goal, there was an awful lot of long range efforts or efforts that were from slightly odd angles. I'm thinking of one from Whittaker, I think in the 80th minute, where it's so well wide. It almost goes out for a corner kick, and there's a fair number of crosses that end up going out for Oxford throws because Middlesbrough haven't got a man in the box, or their run is, their run's not quite right. It's you can see kind of frustration from a Middlesbrough's point of view for the fact they've not at least got that equaliser sooner, or maybe gone on to get a second.
Yeah, there was a lot of frustration I've noticed on Middlesbrough socials directed at Tommy Conway, and I think rightly so. He wasn't really in the game, was he? I'm not sure what you think about that, but I was expecting him to turn up and actually have a good game. But is it almost like they are missing? You're gonna have to remind me of the name, Sam. I've had so much on my mind recently. Middlesbrough striker who went off to Atlanta in the MLS.
Mate Latte-Lath.
It's almost it's as if in that game that they were missing him, because I think when for example, in the 91st minute, I think it was crossover, Tommy Conway, he almost leant back away from the ball, and all he needed to do was just nod his head forward a couple inches, and we could be having a completely different conversation.
I mean, Latte-Lath, I think he scored a hat-trick when they tonked us last season.
He did, yeah.
So you're right. They're missing that kind of that figure up top who's just who's got that clinical edge to them. And I think there was some hope that, like say, Tom Conway or Whitaker will be able to step up into that into that role that Latte vacated, but he's not turned out to be so far. We did have one, I'd say two probably actually good opportunities, I think, in that second half to win the game. Both involving Philip Krastev. You mentioned Stan Mills. He another substitute appearance for Stan. I get what you're saying about, Stan's brilliant for those last 20-minute, half an hour periods, but I also think one of his greatest attributes is his work rate. He runs his backside off, and defensively, in the attacking phase, and I just want him to get. I want him to get the reward for constantly being a pain in the arse for opposition defenders in more starts. It seems that, Rout will give Stan 2 games to start and then drop him for another 3, or drop him to the bench, which is really infuriating. But one of those runs was down the right hand side, ball in, and I think it misses Will Lancashire, and Krastev has to kind of check back onto his right foot and puts it wide.
Yeah, I do. Stan Mills is probably my favourite player at the club, and even more than Brannigan. I love that boy so much, and I do want him to start. I said I want him to start, but as I said, I also do understand why Rowett leaves him on the bench and wants to bring him on for the last 20, 25 minutes. Going at tire legs and just how forward and how fast and how direct he is. So I completely understand it from that point, but I would love to see him starting at least one of these games coming up, because I think that he can prove to be such a nuisance.
Definitely. And the second chance that Krastev has, he picks the ball brilliantly up from, I think it's Will Volks in the midfield in like the 89th minute maybe. Drives forward. It's a decent effort, but it's kind of well saved by the Middlesbrough keeper. It's low to the keeper's left-hand side, who does spill it, but he collects it before Mark Harris is able to latch onto it. I thought this was a bright little showing from Krastev off the bench, and hopefully, like you said, with a few of the players we've that haven't had many minutes so far this season, hopefully he'll get a bit more involvement in this week's fixtures. You mentioned about Mark Harris. I see. Here's the thing. I love Sparky. We all love Sparky. But I will say that I think before Lancashire was brought off for, who did Lancashire get brought off for? Because it was Harris for Harris. But there was a period of time where we had Harris and Lancashire both playing, and I think Sparky was playing more of that number 10 role, and I thought he did all right. He kind of obviously ran his arse off, all that kind of thing, but he was causing problems for Middlesbrough.
Yeah. Sorry, was that Lancashire or Mark Harris?
Lancashire.
Lancashire.
Lancashire and Harris when they were playing in as a 2, and you had Mark Harris as the kind of the number 10, and I thought he did okay.
Yeah, I think he did okay. I'll be honest, Sam, I didn't really think he had much of an impact. I'm not sure whether it's just my bias towards Mark Harris at the championship level, but I didn't really see much from him. I don't see much from him most weeks. And then when Lancashire came off, it was Romane that came on, so that moved Harris up into the 9.
Yes, that was it.
And then Romane moved into the 10, and then you could just, when Harris went into the 9, you could see the difference that we had in a lack of a physical presence up front from Lancashire compared to Harris, in my opinion anyway. So I just think that Lancashire, he has a greater physical presence. He can hold up more. I think that defenders are a little bit, not that they're afraid of him, but they're more cautious of him because of the physical presence and the football intelligence that he brings. Not to say that Harris isn't an intelligent footballer, but when you look at the two sides comparatively, I'm more assured when there's Lancashire up front if he's playing up on his own compared to Mark Harris. And I know we've had a bit of debate about him in our group chat on Twitter, and I know that we have a bit of a disagreement on Harris. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, I do get it, because Sparky's confidence is obviously in the ground right now. It's been like that, for a couple of you know,
It's
from a
been
season
more
and
than
a
a
half at
couple
this
of
point.
months. Yeah.
Yeah, season and a half at this point. But I it's difficult because obviously I really like him. I've never hit that. And he's a good striker for late on in games when you're looking to test a tired defence. But I do get what you mean in terms of for the majority of the 90, you want a player with a bit of a bigger build. I think they're the same height, but Lancashire's a bit wider and cause a bit more issues for opposition defences.
I would not be. This is people are not going to like it, but I would not. I would not totally be against sending Harris out on loan to a League One club that's chasing promotion. And by that I mean even going back to a Cardiff, going to a Bolton, even going to a Bradford, who at the moment are going guns for a top six place. Send him down a league where you know that he's going to score goals, even if he's scoring 5, 6, or 7. Get him some confidence back because that boy desperately needs confidence. He's not even scoring for his country against teams that you would expect a striker for Wales to score against. We all can see that he's absolutely lacking confidence. Because let's say, for example, in FA, still here, FA Cup third round, let's just say we get, I don't know, a National League North or South club. He plays and he doesn't score. He is going to get absolutely shredded. And I don't want that for him because of how much of an impact he had, not only when he got us promoted, but at the start of last season as well, and also towards the back end of last season.
Speaking of players with not a lot of confidence, I want to quickly touch on the returning Tyler Goodrum. We mentioned obviously he was back in the side. I thought overall it was a difficult game because you could tell he was kind of getting back up to speed with things. Obviously, got a really good reception from the Oxford fans. We'd like to see one of our own back. Like you say, hopefully this is the start of a couple more involvements for Tyler because we can see just how good he can be. But he has struggled a little bit with the physicality of the Championship.
Yeah, Rowett said that in his post-match interview, said that he had a good start to the season last season. And then I think it was around December, January time, I think, where he mentioned that the Championship might have just caught up to him in terms of the physicality and the pace of the game. And I don't think you could really argue with a word of what he said. So it was a nice surprise to see him back in because I think that a lot of fans were resigned to the fact that he'd been alienated and that he was going out on loan. So maybe this is his chance to say Rowett's given him this chance with only about 6 weeks to go until the window. Prove why you shouldn't go out and why you should be starting in the team more regularly.
Especially, obviously, the festive fixture list is going to be jam-packed. We're going to need every player available to us. And I think that might also be a pivotal time for Tyler at this football club to determine, like you say, whether he does go out on loan or whether he's here for the second half of the campaign. But good to see Tyler back, all things considered. Connor, as the EFL expert, give us the lowdown on our next two opponents. Obviously, first we've got Philip Clement's newly appointed at Norwich City. Obviously, they got tonked by Birmingham 4-1 yesterday. This just spells for Norwich. They're going to win 2-0, aren't they?
Yeah, they've lost all 8 games at home this season. They've been absolute garbage at home. So step up Oxford United and new manager Bounce FC. They can't just rely either on Josh Sargent because he isn't getting the service that he needs because they've lost players in the past 2 seasons, such as Sainz, such as Costa. They've lost and Nunes. They've lost their main players that would have had any creativity whatsoever. I mean, there's Kifsagarten playing in the 10, but there's not much that he can do again if there's no creativity around them. And going into Norwich, I think that, especially with a new manager, the Norwich City faithful, Tuesday night under the lights, they're gonna see this already, and I think a couple of Oxford fans will do as well as a relegation 6-pointer and one that they absolutely have to win. And then I think they know in the back of their mind that if they don't pick up 3 points, and then by that time they could go, I think it's 8 points from safety. They know that they could almost be have 1 foot in the League One grave. So, yeah, with Philip Clement, by the way, I think you could say from a Norwich point of view, that's a very shrewd appointment. To get a manager who's been at big clubs in European terms, like Rangers, and also winning 3 Belgian division titles with Genk and Brugge. So from that point of view, you think it's very shrewd. But then if you're looking at it from Philip Clement's standpoint, you could argue that it's a bit of a risky job to take because your stock could fall very, very low if you have that squad and, you're getting relegated to League One after what parachute payments finished last year. And typically a club that were, I think, our generation's yo-yo club. So my overarching point, Sam, is that
definitely.
Shit or bust. If we don't win on Tuesday, it's going to be I think a lot of hands are going to be in front of eyes, especially after Sheffield United picking up points against Wednesday today.
Definitely. You could do a whole podcast on, and many Norwich fans I'm sure have, on kind of what's happened with their football club, because it is a bit of a basket case in the sense of, like, say, selling Nunes to the bitter rivals in the summer, still having Josh Arden is madness, but obviously losing Boro Sainz, Gabi Sara. There's a lot of talent that's kind of gone through Carrow Road in recent seasons.
In the back line as well, Harry Darling, Jack Stacey as well. Like, these are players who should be nowhere near the relegation zone. But if you're putting Shane Duffy in your back four, then you do deserve to be near the relegation zone. Do you know what I mean? And just on Josh Sargent, if they're not picking up a top end championship team or even a Premier League team will come and pick him up. Like, do not be surprised if Ipswich again go back into Norwich squad and say, you see that big ginger striker up top? We fancy him. We'll have a bit of him. Gone in for a top 6 finish.
Or even the sides in the Bundesliga like Wolfsburg, who I believe were interested in summer. Couldn't come to terms on fees, but if Norwich were to drop out of the division, that price tag probably gets chopped in half.
Exactly.
Like you said, Shane Duffy, I heard he's on like 34 grand a week or something like that, which is absolutely madness.
He's beefing with kids on Twitter. Why is he in the back line? Why is he in a championship back line?
Christ. Not a good look. Let's go to the other side of East Anglia, from Norfolk to Suffolk. The visit of Kieran McKenna's Ipswich Town on Friday night. Give us the lowdown on their season so far.
I think, as many people would attest, it didn't start off, that particularly well. The first 4 or 5 games, I think there was a bit of trepidation, but over the past 6 now, they've won 4. They've won 3, won 3, drawn 2, and they're coming together, I think, as a side that many expected to be where they will be, up and around the top 2 at the very least. On the past 2 occasions, they put 4 past their opponents away from home. So, got Hull coming up, and then Oxford. That's going to be a lot of travels for them. So let's hope that they haven't scored 4 again on Tuesday night at Hull. But, I think most people looked at this squad and thought, yeah, they're going to be at the top 2, at the very least. And with someone like Jaden Philogene, who has just absolutely exploded in the championship again. Yeah. He is looking very, very deadly down the left-hand side, and definitely a player that I think that a lot of Oxford fans on Friday night will be very appreciative of what he can bring to a team. So I think that he might well be the star player on the pitch come Friday night.
Another footballer like Hayden Hackney, where the fact that he's still in the Championship is a bit of a joke. Obviously, he had that very odd move to Villa for 6 months of last season, and then obviously went to Ipswich. But like you said, the quality in Ipswich's side is still a bit ridiculous. They've obviously got parachute payments if they don't get promoted this season. And I mean, I would be surprised, though, I will say, if Ipswich don't win promotion, I would be surprised if Kieran McKenna's still with them. Obviously, there's a lot of interest already in Kieran McKenna. So if he's not snapped up by a Premier League side with any upcoming sackings, I'd be very surprised if he's there next season if Ipswich don't end up back in the Prem.
He signed a contract last summer, didn't he? A new contract, and that might have been not a clause, but that might have been an agreement because his boss is Mark Ashton, who used to be at Oxford, and I don't think that Mark Ashton strikes me as a bloke that would go back on his word. So I wouldn't. You're right. I wouldn't be totally surprised if there was some agreement in there that if Ipswich were relegated and they weren't promoted this season, albeit if it wasn't through disastrous circumstances, and if it was, say, missing out in the playoffs, and then there will be. I think that Kieran McKenna has earned enough stripes and has earned enough kudos to go and explore other opportunities should they come about.
Definitely. Thank you, mate. That's another episode of Walking the Road in the book. Folks, like I said at the beginning of the episode, we'd really appreciate it if you like, comment, and subscribe. Helps out in the algorithm. Also, share it to any other Auction Night fans to help us expand our reach. Follow myself and Connor on Twitter. You can see our handles on screen. And we'll see you next week after a jam-packed week with one very important game and one almost free hit. Well, we'll wait and see.